Well, what's up everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're gonna put my R35 back to back with my manual Toyota Supra. Now, a few years ago, I owned an automatic MK5 Supra, and I talked a lot about how the fun factor was in that car versus the R35. Now, fast forward, we got the manual 2023 model year, so we're gonna see, is a manual transmission equipped in the MK5 Supra? Does that put it to the fun factor that you get in an R35? So we're gonna take the GTR for a spin, get our bearings with it, then hop in the Supra, and compare these two cars. So in the R35 GTR, what is fun about driving in this car? Well, there's a lot of characteristics. One of my most favorite aspects that makes this so much fun is the fact that this is kind of an old school car. I mean, this car was designed in the early 2000s, really. I think 2007 was the first time they really hit the roads. And it has that old school character, unlike a modern car. It's got a dual clutch transmission, but one of the earlier ones to where it's a little clunky, it's a little rough around the edges, and it has a raw mechanical feeling. I know some people think these are computers on wheels. Honestly, this is a very raw car, and you really become one with the GTR. It is so unique. I have yet to find a car that drives just like it. It's super special. Also, you have some power. This thing is fast. It's also really practical. It is a usable car, so you can drive it all the time, do anything with it, and you don't really have to worry about it. Wow. The shifting is lightning quick when you're on the car and in race mode, and even weighing about 3,800 pounds. It is pretty darn good for handling. When you have the suspension in race mode, the car tightens up. It feels really planted, really solid, and it just gives you that old school supercar vibe. Along with that, another fun thing about the car is the fact that it actually is pretty usable, and it kind of flies under the radar. You don't have to worry about driving this to certain places, because if you're not a car person, you probably have no clue what this car even is. So that has been a really cool aspect about owning this car. But back to the performance, when you drive it around town, it's a little clunky, it's a little sloppy feeling, mainly because this car is designed to be driven at high speeds in performance settings. The faster you drive it, the harder you push it, the more precise and the more like a race car you find out that this car drives like. The steering gets more responsive as you go faster. The acceleration rips your face off. It pushes the blood back in your body. Gosh. It is a car, truly, you have to be on your toes. If you're not on your toes, the limits are so high in this car, you could run into some issues. Gosh. It accelerates to speeds that you just can't imagine, quite honestly, and the whole car can handle it. The brakes can handle it, the steering can handle it, the suspension can handle it. It is truly a track car that happens to be insanely usable and practical. Wow. So I think the fun factor, the biggest takeaway from a GTR, insane speed, and you can do things at very high speeds that other cars just simply can't do. When I take a sharp turn, I can pin it to 100 miles an hour, hit the brakes, and take the next turn at 50. You know, other cars, you can't quite get to those speeds, and you can't take the same turns at the same speeds. Wow, this thing's fun. So then now turning around into the Toyota Supra, when we look at pricing, a manual Supra like this is gonna go for around $60,000. A brand new R35 GTR is about $120,000. So this is half the car when you come to price. However, especially paired to the 6-speed, it is not half the car. The B58 in these Supras is an amazing motor. While it's not making 545 horsepower, it still puts down about 400 to the wheels with this transmission. And 0 to 60 time, definitely not 2.7 seconds like in a GTR, but you can still get into the 4s with the stick shift, and it makes some stupid power if you modify it. So, one of the biggest fun factors, of course, is the option to have a manual. Now, I love the old school dual clutch, but this car with a manual, it is really that old school driver connection. I mean, that is what driving is, being one with the car for sure. And then the handling, the Supra is so pinpointy. It is much lighter weight, weighing in closer to 3,400 pounds. So it's got a lot less weight when you look at the GTR, and the handling shows. It's so nimble, it's so pinpointy. You can put this car exactly where you want it. And being rear-wheel drive rather than the all-wheel drive, you can drift it, you can do stuff like that. So it certainly wakes up the fun factor of what a car can offer. And after experiencing the manual in this car, man, I think I said this the day I bought this car, this is hot on the heels of the R35. I think the automatic Supra, it is definitely a step back as far as fun when you compare it to a GTR. Still an amazing car, and for half the price, what a heck of a deal. These are some of the best cars money can buy right now, especially for a much more affordable price point than a GTR. But that sounds good. To me though, the manual on this makes this car something that I crave driving. My automatic Supra, I really liked how it was a good blend of a practical normal car and yet an awesome sports car. And while I owned my automatic Supra, that was 2 years of ownership alongside that same GTR, I never craved driving the Supra. I love driving it, and I'm glad it took the burden of daily driving the GTR away, but I never craved driving it. I loved driving it, but if I hadn't driven it for a week, I wasn't just itching and just so wanting to drive it again. That said, I didn't love it, but it didn't have that same feeling. The GTR, if I don't drive it for a couple weeks, I really miss it. This car is the same exact way. I miss driving this. I wasn't able to drive when I had the seatbelts shipped out for a week, and I missed this car. I wasn't able to drive it a few other circumstances when I was busy, and I crave driving this. So I almost want to say, I don't think this is, man, it's a tough one. Neither car, I would say, is technically more fun. They are both an absolute blast. The GTR gives you that precision race car with the clunky slow speed stuff that you're going to expect from an old school car. This gives you modern tech, not nearly as much practicality, much better handling, much more pinpointy and nimble, and that old school stick shift feeling. So it's almost an equal fun factor, just a completely different car. And I really like how they both offer just such a special experience. So what are some things the Supra could do better to be on par with the GTR? Well, the fact that it costs half as much, I think that weighs a lot into the decision, because you're just not going to get the same exact fun factor. This does feel like a pretty normal car at the end of the day. It's a BMW Toyota blend in here, so a very normal car. The GTR does have an extra sense of this is something special. So it has that supercar feeling. Obviously, it has supercar performance. We all know that. I mean, when that car came out, its 0 to 60 time matched a Bugatti Veyron, the first $1 million car. So you just didn't see that. The Supra, obviously being half-price GTR, it just doesn't have that same level of supercar feeling. However, for a really nice, decently priced mid-level performance car, the Supra, I think for 60 grand is the best car at this price point. I have no complaints where either car sits for the money. With that said, I don't think, because the Supra exists, that I could justify dropping $120 on a brand new GTR. That's a lot of money. It's an amazing car. However, it is a 15, 16-year-old car. It's very old. I love the old school aspects, but there could be some updates for still 120 grand for a brand new 2024 model year. The Supra at half the cost, I think, is a better buy. With that said, a used GTR, like my car, I'm selling the GTR for $80,000. I would, if I had to pick, I would go for the GTR. I think that is a better deal, getting a used GTR, than this, just because you get that extra sense of supercar power and supercar old school feeling. However, if you truly want a stick shift manual transmission, this thing is just so cool. So I think price point, a new GTR, I think is a little bit too much. It's not twice a Supra. But on the used market, a really good GTR for 100, maybe down to 80, like my car, heck of a good buy. Now you can get much older GTRs, 2009, 2010s, with maybe 60 to 80,000 miles. Now those cars are gonna cost you about as much as this, $60,000, something like that. to me, I feel like you're just getting a little too old of a car. While fun factor alone, an older GTR is gonna still give you a lot of what my 2014 has to offer, to me, you're just gonna sacrifice a little bit of having physically an old car with a lot of miles. So at this price point, $60,000, I would go Supra all day long, even if you're getting an automatic, because the ZF is one of the best torque converter automatics. But if you really are just looking for a fun factor in a sports car, for 60 grand, manual Supra by far is the way to go. And then if you're wanting a GTR, I would go towards that $70,000 to $90,000 price point, because I think the bang for the buck, you know, that dollar amount for that fun factor is spot on, and you really can't go wrong. Any more than that, yeah, I mean, it's cool to be getting a brand new one. They're gonna hold value really well, but I don't know, I think it's just a little old for being brand new. But yeah, the manual with this handling, it is what makes this Supra so darn fun and just so right in par with what the GTR has to offer. It is truly a blast every time I'm behind the wheel of this car, and it is something that really, really stands out as a fun car. All right, so after driving the R35 back-to-back with the MK5 Supra, ending thoughts. Honestly, because the Supra has a 6-speed manual, to me, it puts it right up there with the GTR in terms of fun factor. They are both cars that if I haven't driven them for a minute, I want to drive them so bad. If you hand me both keys on any given day, I will want to take either car as much as I possibly can. They are both so much fun, and the manual really is what wakes up the Supra to just be something special. It gives it that wow factor that a GTR has. It's not as fast, it's not as much of a raw supercar, but for the price point given new for new, it's half the price. It is one heck of a bargain. And then the GTR, around 20 grand more as this one sits. I think that is a really good price point. Yeah, it's older, less tech, more miles, but the supercar aspects for that price is something you can't argue with. But there you guys go. Final video, by the way, with my GTR as it is for sale. Hope you all enjoyed today's video answering the question, is the manual Supra as fun as a GTR? I think they are pretty spot on with being about equal. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, stay tuned for plenty more content. I'll see you all in the next video.